Welcome back to a cozy reading corner at Mountain Home Stories. Today I'm taking you on a very special journey deep into the nostalgic heart of ancient rural India. To do this, we are opening the pages of a beautiful historic treasure, Folk Tales of Bengal, written all the way back in 1883 by the legendary scholar Lal Behari Dey. In this immersive one-hour collection, we will explore 5 rare, magnificent stories. We will uncover hidden secrets beneath an ancient banyan tree in A Ghostly Wife. Next, we'll outsmart a greedy village landlord in the Brahmadaitya. And we will witness an incredible quick thinking in The Ghost Who Was Afraid of Being Bagged. These stories are filled with the exact warmth of childhood summer vacations at your grandparents' house, full of rustic charm, gentle humor, and brilliant wit. So pour your favorite warm cup of tea, wrap yourself up comfortably, and for the next hour, let's escape into the magic of the hidden village together. Story 1: A Ghostly Wife. Once on a time, there lived a Brahman who had married a wife and who lived in the same house with his mother. Near his house was a tank, on the embankment of which stood a tree, on the boughs of which lived a ghost of the kind called Shankuchini. One night the Brahman's wife had occasion to go to the tank, and as she went, she brushed by a Shankuchini who stood near, on which the she-ghost got very angry with the woman, seized her up by the throat, climbed into her tree, and thrust her into a hole in the trunk. There the woman lay almost dead with fear. The ghost put on the clothes of the woman and went into the house of the Brahman. Neither the Brahman nor his mother had any inkling of the change. The Brahman thought his wife returned from the tank, and the mother thought that it was her daughter-in-law. Next morning, the mother-in-law discovered some change in her daughter-in-law. Her daughter-in-law, she knew, was constitutionally weak and languid, and took a long time to do the work of the house. But she had apparently become quite a different person. All of a sudden, she had become very active. She now did the work of the house in an incredibly short time. Suspecting nothing, the old woman said nothing either to her son or to her daughter-in-law. On the contrary, she inly rejoiced that her daughter-in-law had turned over a new leaf. But her surprise became every day greater and greater. The cooking of the household was done in much less time than before. When the mother-in-law wanted the daughter-in-law to bring anything from the next room, it was brought in much less time than was required in walking from one room to the other. The ghost, instead of going inside the next room, would stretch a long arm, for ghosts can lengthen or shorten any limb of their bodies, from the door and get the thing. One day, the old woman observed the ghost doing this. She ordered her to bring a vessel from some distance, and the ghost unconsciously stretched her hand to several yards distance and brought it in a trice. The old woman was struck with wonder at the sight. She said nothing to her, but spoke to her son. Both mother and son began to watch the ghost more narrowly. One day, the old woman knew that there was no fire in the house, and she knew also that her daughter-in-law had not gone out of doors to get it. And yet, strange to say, the hearth in the kitchen room was quite in a blaze. She went in and, to her infinite surprise, found that her daughter-in-law was not using any fuel for cooking, but had thrust into the oven her foot, which was blazing brightly. The old mother told her son what she had seen, and they both concluded that the young woman in the house was not his real wife, but a she-ghost. The son witnessed those very acts of the ghost which his mother had seen. An Ojha was therefore sent for. The exorcist came and wanted in the first instance to ascertain whether the woman was a real woman or a ghost. For this purpose, he lighted a piece of turmeric and set it below the nose of the supposed woman. Now, this was an infallible test, as no ghost, whether male or female, can put up with the smell of burnt turmeric. The moment the lighted turmeric was taken near her, she screamed aloud and ran away from the room. It was now plain that she was either a ghost or a woman possessed by a ghost. The woman was caught hold of by main force and asked who she was. At first, she refused to make any disclosure, on which the Oja took up his slippers and began belaboring her with them. Then the ghost said with a strong nasal accent, for all ghosts speak through the nose, that she was a Shankuchini, that she lived on a tree by the side of the tank, that she had seized the young Brahmani and put her in the hollow of her tree because one night she had touched her, and that if any person went to the hole, the woman would be found. The woman was brought from the tree almost dead. The ghost was again shoe-beaten, after which process, on her declaring solemnly that she would not again do any harm to the Brahman and his family, she was released from the spell of the Oja and sent away, and the wife of the Brahman recovered slowly. After which, the Brahman and his wife lived many years happily together and begat many sons and daughters. Here my story endeth, the knotted withereth, etc. Story 2. The story of Brahmadaitya. Once on a time there lived a poor Brahman who had a wife. As he had no means of livelihood, he used every day to beg from door to door, and thus got some rice which they boiled and ate, together with some greens which they gleaned from the fields. After some time it chanced that the village changed its owner, and the Brahman bethought himself of asking some boon of the new laird. So one morning the Brahman went to the laird's house to pay him court. It so happened that at that time the laird was making inquiries of his servants about the village and its various parts. The laird was told that a certain banyan tree in the outskirts of the village was haunted by a number of ghosts, and that no man had ever the boldness to go to that tree at night. In bygone days, some rash fellows went to the tree at night, but the necks of them all were wrung, and they all died. Since that time, no man had ventured to go to the tree at night, though in the day some neat herds took their cows to the spot. The new laird, on hearing this, said that if anyone would go at night to the tree, cut one of its branches and bring it to him, he would make him a present of 100 bighas of rent-free land. None of the servants of the laird accepted the challenge, as they were sure they would be throttled by the ghosts. The Brahman, who was sitting there, thought within himself thus, "I am almost starved to death now, as I never get my belly full. If I go to the tree at night and succeed in cutting off one of its branches, I shall get 100 bighas of rent-free land and become independent for life. If the ghosts kill me, my case will not be worse, for to die of hunger is no better than to be killed by ghosts." He then offered to go to the tree and cut off a branch that night. The laird renewed his promise and said to the Brahman that if he succeeded in bringing one of the branches of that haunted tree at night, he would certainly give him 100 bighas of rent-free land. In the course of the day, when the people of the village heard of the laird's promise and of the Brahman's offer, they all pitied the poor man. They blamed him for his foolhardiness, as they were sure the ghosts would kill him, as they had killed so many before. His wife tried to dissuade him from the rash undertaking, but in vain. He said he would die in any case, but there was some chance of his escaping and of thus becoming independent for life. Accordingly, 1 hour after sundown, the Brahman set out. He went to the outskirts of the village without the slightest fear as far as a certain vakula tree, Mimusab's Elengi, from which the haunted tree was about 1 rope distant. But under the vakula tree, the Brahman's heart misgave him. He began to quake with fear, and the heaving of his heart was like the upward and downward motion of the paddy husking pedal. The Vakula tree was the haunt of a Brahmadaitya, who, seeing the Brahman stop under the tree, spoke to him and said, "Are you afraid, Brahman? Tell me what you wish to do, and I'll help you. I am Brahmadaitya." The Brahman replied, "O blessed spirit, I wish to go to yonder banyan tree and cut off one of its branches for the zamindar, who has promised to give me 100 bighas of rent-free land for it. But my courage is failing me. I shall thank you very much for helping me." The Brahmadaitya answered, "Certainly I'll help you, Brahman. Go on towards the tree and I'll come with you." The Brahman, relying on the supernatural strength of his invisible patron, who is the object of the fear and reverence of common ghosts, fearlessly walked towards the haunted tree, on reaching which he began to cut a branch with the bill which was in his hand. But the moment the first stroke was given, a great many ghosts rushed towards the Brahman, who would have been torn to pieces but for the interference of the Brahmadaitya. The Brahmadaitya said in a commanding tone, "Ghosts, listen. This is a poor Brahman. He wishes to get a branch of this tree which will be of great use to him. It is my will that you let him cut a branch." The ghosts, hearing the voice of the Brahmadaitya, replied, "Be it accordingly to thy will, Lord. At thy bidding, we are ready to do anything. Let not the Brahman take the trouble of cutting. We ourselves will cut a branch for him." So saying, in the twinkling of an eye, the ghosts put into the hands of the Brahman a branch of the tree, with which he went as fast as his legs could carry him to the house of the zamindar. The zamindar and his people were not a little surprised to see the branch, but he said, "Well, I must see tomorrow whether this branch is a branch of the haunted tree or not. If it be, you will get the promised reward." Next morning, the zamindar himself went along with his servants to the haunted tree, and found to their infinite surprise that the branch in their hands was really a branch of that tree, as they saw the part from which it had been cut off. Being thus satisfied, the zamindar ordered a deed to be drawn up, by which he gave to the Brahman forever 100 bighas of rent-free land. Thus, in one night, the Brahman became a rich man. It so happened that the fields of which the Brahman became the owner were covered with ripe paddy, ready for the sickle. But the Brahman had not the means to reap the golden harvest. He had not a pice in his pocket for paying the wages of the reapers. What was the Brahman to do? He went to his spirit friend, the Brahmadaitya, and said, "O Brahmadaitya, I am in great distress. Through your kindness, I got the rent-free land all covered with ripe paddy, but I have not the means of cutting the paddy, as I am a poor man. What shall I do?" The kind Brahmadaitya answered, "O Brahman, don't be troubled in your mind about the matter. I'll see to it that the paddy is not only cut, but that the corn is threshed and stored up in granaries, and the straw piled up in ricks. Only you do one thing. Borrow from men in the village 100 sickles and put them at the foot of this tree at night. Prepare also the exact spot on which the grain and the straw are to be stored up." The joy of the Brahman knew no bounds. He easily got 100 sickles, as the husbandmen of the village, knowing that he had become rich, readily lent him what he wanted. At sunset, he took the 100 sickles and put them beneath the Vakula tree. He also selected a spot of ground near his hut for his magazine of paddy and for his ricks of straw, and washed the spot with a solution of cow dung and water. After making these preparations, he went to sleep. In the meantime, soon after nightfall, when the villagers had all retired to their houses, the Brahmadaitya called to him the ghosts of the haunted tree, who were 100 in number, and said to them, "You must go tonight to some work for the poor Brahman whom I am befriending. The 100 bighas of land which he has got from the zamindar are all covered with standing ripe corn. He has not the means to reap it. This night you all must do the work for him. Here are, you see, 100 sickles. Let each of you take a sickle in hand and come to the field I shall show him. There are 100 of you. Let each ghost cut the paddy of 1 bigha. Bring the sheaves on his back to the Brahman's house. Thresh the corn. Put the corn in one large granary and pile up the straw in separate ricks. Now, don't lose time. You must do it all this very night. The 100 ghosts at once said to the Brahmadaitya, "We are ready to do whatever your lordship commands us." The Brahmadaitya showed the ghosts the Brahman's house and the spot prepared for receiving the grain and the straw, and then took them to the Brahman's fields, all waving with the golden harvest. The ghosts at once fell to it. A ghost harvest reaper is different from a human harvest reaper. What a man cuts in a whole day, a ghost cuts in a minute. Mash, mash, mash. The sickles went round, and the long stalks of paddy fell to the ground. The reaping over, the ghosts took up the sheaves on their huge backs and carried them all to the Brahman's house. The ghosts then separated the grain from the straw, stored up the grain in one huge storehouse, and piled up the straw in many a fantastic rick. It was full 2 hours before sunrise when the ghosts finished their work and retired to rest on their tree. No words can tell either the joy of the Brahman and his wife when early next morning they opened the door of their hut, or the surprise of the villagers when they saw the huge granary and the fantastic ricks of straw. The villagers did not understand it. They at once ascribed it to the gods. A few days after this, the Brahman went to the Vakula tree and said to the Brahmadaitya, "I have one more favor to ask of you, Brahmadaitya. As the gods have been very gracious to me, I wish to feed 1,000 Brahmans, and I shall thank you for providing me with the materials of the feast." "With the greatest pleasure," said the polite Brahmadaitya. "I'll supply you with the requirements of a feast for 1,000 Brahmans. Only show me the cellars in which the provisions are to be stored away." The Brahman improvised a storeroom. The day before the feast, the storeroom was overflowing with provisions. There were 100 jars of ghee, clarified butter, 1 hill of flour, 100 jars of sugar, 100 jars of milk, curds, and congealed milk, and the other 1,001 things required to a great Brahmanical feast. The next morning, 100 Brahman pastry cooks were employed. The 1,000 Brahmans ate their fill. But the host, the Brahman of the story, did not eat. He thought he would eat with the Brahmadaitya. But the Brahmadaitya, who was present there, though unseen, told him that he could not gratify him on that point, as by befriending the Brahman, the Brahmadaitya's allotted period had come to an end, and the Pushpaka chariot had been sent to him from heaven. The Brahmadaitya, being released from his ghostly life, was taken up into heaven, and the Brahman lived happily for many years, begetting sons and grandsons. Here my story endeth. The naughty-thorn withereth, etc. Story 3. The Ghost-Brahman. Once on a time there lived a poor Brahman who, not being a Kulin, found it the hardest thing in the world to get married. He went to rich people and begged of them to give him money that he might marry a wife. And a large sum of money was needed, not so much for the expense of the wedding as for giving to the parents of the bride. He begged from door to door, flattered many rich folk, and at last succeeded in scraping together the sum needed. The wedding took place in due time, and he brought home his wife to his mother. After a short time, he said to his mother, "Mother, I have no means to support you and my wife. I must therefore go to distant countries to get money somehow or other. I may be away for years, for I won't return till I get a good sum. In the meantime, I'll give you what I have. You make the best of it and take care of my wife." The Brahman, receiving his mother's blessing, set out on his travels. In the evening of that very day, a ghost, assuming the exact appearance of the Brahman, came into the house. The newly married woman, thinking it was her husband, said to him, "How is it that you have returned so soon? You said you might be away for years. Why have you changed your mind?" The ghost said, "Today is not a lucky day. I have therefore returned home. Besides, I have already got some money." The mother did not doubt but that it was her son. So the ghost lived in the house as if he was its owner, and as if he was the son of the old woman and the husband of the young woman. As the ghost and the Brahman were exactly like each other in everything, like two peas, the people in the neighborhood all thought that the ghost was the real Brahman. After some years, the Brahman returned from his travels, and what was his surprise when he found another like him in the house. The ghost said to the Brahman, "Who are you? What business have you to come to my house?" "Who am I?" replied the Brahman. "Let me ask who you are. This is my house, that is my mother, and this is my wife." The ghost said, "Why, herein is a strange thing. Everyone knows that this is my house, that is my wife, and yonder is my mother, and I have lived here for years. And you pretend this is your house, and that woman is your wife. Your head must have got turned, Brahman." So saying, the ghost drove away the Brahman from his house. The Brahman became mute with wonder. He did not know what to do. At last, he bethought himself of going to the king and of laying his case before him. The king saw the ghost Brahman as well as the Brahman, and the one was the picture of the other. So he was in a fix and did not know how to decide the quarrel. Day after day, the Brahman went to the king and besought him to give him back his house, his wife, and his mother. And the king, not knowing what to say every time, put him off to the following day. Every day the king tells him to come tomorrow, and every day the Brahman goes away from the palace, weeping and striking his forehead with the palm of his hand and saying, "What a wicked world this is! I am driven from my own house, and another fellow has taken possession of my house and of my wife. And what a king this is! He does not do justice." Now, it came to pass that as the Brahman went away every day from the court outside the town, he passed a spot at which a great many cowboys used to play. They let the cows graze on the meadow, while they themselves met together under a large tree to play, and they played at royalty. One cowboy was elected king, another prime minister or wazir, another kotwal or prefect of the police, and others constables. Every day for several days together they saw the Brahman passing by weeping. One day the cowboy king asked his wazir whether he knew why the Brahman wept every day. On the wazir not being able to answer the question, the cowboy king ordered one of his constables to bring the Brahman to him. One of them went and said to the Brahman, "The king requires your immediate attendance." The Brahman replied, "What for? I have just come from the king, and he put me off till tomorrow. Why does he want me again?" "It is our king that wants you, our neat-herd king," rejoined the constable. "Who is neat-herd king?" asked the Brahman. "Come and see," was the reply. The neat-herd king then asked the Brahman why he every day went away weeping. The Brahman then told him his sad story. The neat-herd king, after hearing the whole, said, "I understand your case. I will give you again all your rights. Only go to the king and ask his permission for me to decide your case." The Brahman went back to the king of the country and begged his majesty to send his case to the neat-haired king, who had offered to decide it. The king, whom the case had greatly puzzled, granted the permission sought. The following morning was fixed for the trial. The neat-haired king, who saw through the hole, brought with him next day a file with a narrow neck. The Brahman and the Ghost-Brahman both appeared at the bar. After a great deal of examination of witnesses and of speech-making, the neat-haired king said, "Well, I have heard enough. I'll decide the case at once. Here is this file. Whichever of you will enter into it shall be declared by the court to be the rightful owner of the house, the title of which is in dispute. Now let me see. Which of you will enter?" The Brahman said, "You are a neat-haired, and your intellect is that of a neat-haired. What man can enter into such a small file?" "If you cannot enter," said the neat-haired king, "then you are not the rightful owner. What do you say, sir, to this?" Turning to the Ghost-Brahman and addressing him, "If you can enter into the file, then the house and wife and the mother become yours." "Of course I will enter," said the ghost. And true to his word, to the wonder of all, he made himself into a small creature like an insect and entered into the file. The neat-haired king forthwith corked up the file, and the ghost could not get out. Then, addressing the Brahman, the neat-haired king said, "Throw this file into the bottom of the sea and take possession of your house, wife, and mother." The Brahman did so and lived happily for many years and begat sons and daughters. Here my story endeth, the knotted thorn withereth, etc. Story 4. The Ghost Who Was Afraid of Being Bagged. Once on a time there lived a barber who had a wife. They did not live happily together, as the wife always complained that she had not enough to eat. Many were the curtain lectures which were inflicted upon the poor barber. The wife used often to say to her mate, "If you had not the means to support a wife, why did you marry me? People who have no means ought not to indulge in the luxury of a wife. When I was in my father's house, I had plenty to eat. But it seems that I have come to your house to fast. Widows only fast. I have become a widow in your lifetime." She was not content with mere words. She got very angry one day and struck her husband with the broomstick of the house. Stung with shame and abhorring himself on account of his wife's reproach and beating, he left his house with the implements of his craft and vowed never to return and see his wife's face again till he had become rich. He went from village to village and towards nightfall came to the outskirts of a forest. He laid himself down at the foot of a tree and spent many a sad hour in bemoaning his hard lot. It so chanced that the tree at the foot of which the barber was lying down was dwelt in by a ghost. The ghost, seeing a human being at the foot of the tree, naturally thought of destroying him. With this intention, the ghost alighted from the tree and, with outspread arms and a gaping mouth, stood like a tall palmyra tree before the barber and said, "Now, barber, I am going to destroy you. Who will protect you?" The barber, though quaking in every limb through fear and his hair standing erect, did not lose his presence of mind, but, with that promptitude and shrewdness which are characteristic of his fraternity, replied, "Oh, spirit, you will destroy me. Wait a bit, and I'll show you how many ghosts I have captured this very night and put into my bag. And right glad am I to find you here, as I shall have one more ghost in my bag." So saying, the barber produced from his bag a small looking glass, which he always carried about with him along with his razors, his whetstone, his strop, and other utensils, to enable his customers to see whether their beards had been well shaved or not. He stood up, placed the looking glass right against the face of the ghost, and said, "Here you see one ghost, which I have seized and bagged. I'm going to put you also in the bag to keep this ghost company." The ghost, seeing his own face in the looking glass, was convinced of the truth of what the barber had said, and was filled with fear. He said to the barber, "Oh, sir barber, I'll do whatever you bid me, only do not put me into your bag. I'll give you whatever you want." The barber said, "You ghosts are faithless set. There is no trusting you. You will promise, and not give what you promise." "Oh, sir," replied the ghost, "be merciful to me. I'll bring to you whatever you order, and if I do not bring it, then put me into your bag." "Very well," said the barber. "Bring me just now 1,000 gold mohurs, and by tomorrow night you must raise a granary in my house and fill it with paddy. Go and get the gold mohurs immediately, and if you fail to do my bidding, you will certainly be put into my bag." The ghost gladly consented to the conditions. He went away, and in the course of a short time returned with a bag containing 1,000 gold mohurs. The barber was delighted beyond measure at the sight of the gold mohurs. He then told the ghost to see to it that by the following night a granary was erected in his house and filled with paddy. It was during the small hours of the morning that the barber, loaded with a heavy treasure, knocked at the door of his house. His wife, who reproached herself for having in a fit of rage struck her husband with a broomstick, got out of bed and unbolted the door. Her surprise was great when she saw her husband pour out of the bag a glittering heap of gold mohurs. The next night, the poor devil, through fear of being bagged, raised a large granary in the barber's house and spent the livelong night in carrying on his back large packages of paddy till the granary was filled up to the brim. The uncle of this terrified ghost, seeing his worthy nephew carrying on his back loads of paddy, asked what the matter was. The ghost related what had happened. The uncle ghost then said, "You fool! You think the barber can bag you? The barber is a cunning fellow. He has cheated you, like a simpleton as you are." "You doubt," said the nephew ghost, "the power of the barber. Come and see." The uncle ghost then went to the barber's house and peeped into it through a window. The barber, perceiving from the blast of wind which the arrival of the ghost had produced that a ghost was at the window, placed full before it the same looking glass, saying, "Come now, I'll put you also into the bag." The uncle ghost, seeing his own face in the looking glass, got quite frightened and promised that very night to raise another granary and to fill it not this time with paddy but with rice. So, in 2 nights, the barber became a rich man and lived happily with his wife, begetting sons and daughters. Here my story ended. The knotty thorn withereth, etc. Story 5. The Matchmaking Jackal. Once on a time there lived a weaver whose ancestors were very rich, but whose father had wasted the property which he had inherited in riotous living. He was born in a palace-like house, but he now lived in a miserable hut. He had no one in the world. his parents and all his relatives having died. Hard by the hut was the lair of a jackal. The jackal, remembering the wealth and grandeur of the weaver's forefathers, had compassion on him, and one day coming to him said, "Friend weaver, I see what a wretched life you are leading. I have a good mind to improve your condition. I'll try and marry you to the daughter of the king of this country." "I become the king's son-in-law," replied the weaver. "That will take place only when the sun rises in the west." "You doubt my power?" rejoined the jackal. "You will see. I'll bring it about." The next morning, the jackal started for the king's city, which was many miles off. On the way, he entered a plantation of the piper beetle plant and plucked a large quantity of its leaves. He reached the capital and contrived to get inside the palace. On the premises of the palace was a tank in which the ladies of the king's household performed their morning and afternoon ablutions. At the entrance of that tank, the jackal laid himself down. The daughter of the king happened to come just at the time to bathe, accompanied by her maids. The princess was not a little struck at seeing the jackal lying down at the entrance. She told her maids to drive the jackal away. The jackal rose as if from sleep and instead of running away, opened his bundle of beetle leaves, put some into his mouth and began chewing them. The princess and her maids were not a little astonished at the sight. They said among themselves, "What an uncommon jackal is this! From what country can he have come? A jackal chewing beetle leaves! Why, thousands of men and women of this city cannot indulge in that luxury. He must have come from a wealthy land." The princess asked the jackal, "Shivalu, from what country do you come? It must be a very prosperous country where the jackals chew beetle leaves. Do other animals in your country chew beetle leaves?" "Dearest princess," replied the jackal, "I come from a land flowing with milk and honey. Beetle leaves are as plentiful in my country as the grass in your fields. All animals in my country, cows, sheep, dogs, chew beetle leaves. We want no good thing." "Happy is the country," said the princess, "where there is such plenty, and thrice happy the king who rules in it." "As for our king," said the jackal, "he is the richest king in the world. His palace is like the heaven of Indra. I have seen your palace here. It is a miserable hut compared to the palace of our king." The princess, whose curiosity was excited to the utmost pitch, hastily went through her bag and, going to the apartments of the queen mother, told her of the wonderful jackal lying at the entrance of the tank. Her curiosity being excited, the jackal was sent for. When the jackal stood in the presence of the queen, he began munching the beetle leaves. "You come," said the queen, "from a very rich country. Is your king married?" "Please, your majesty, our king is not married. Princes from distant parts of the world tried to get married to him, but he rejected them all. Happy will that princess be whom our king condescends to marry." "Don't you think, Shivalu," asked the queen, "that my daughter is as beautiful as a pari, and that she is fit to be the wife of the proudest king in the world?" "I quite think," said the jackal, "that the princess is exceedingly handsome indeed. She is the handsomest princess I have ever seen. But I don't know whether our king will have a liking for her." "Liking for my daughter?" said the queen. "You have only to paint her to him as she is, and he is sure to turn mad with love. To be serious, Shivalu, I am anxious to get my daughter married. Many princes have sought her hand, but I am unwilling to give her to any of them, as they are not the sons of great kings. But your king seems to be a great king. I can have no objection to making him my son-in-law." The queen sent word to the king, requesting him to come and see the jackal. The king came and saw the jackal, heard him describe the wealth and pomp of the king of his country, and expressed himself, not unwillingly, to give away his daughter in marriage to him. The jackal, after this, returned to the weaver and said to him, "O lord of the loom, you are the luckiest man in the world. It is all settled. You are to become the son-in-law of a great king. I have told them that you are yourself a great king, and you must behave yourself as one. You must do just as I instruct you. Otherwise, your fortune will not only not be made, but both you and I will be put to death." "I'll do just as you bid me," said the weaver. The shrewd jackal drew in his own mind a plan of the method of procedure he should adopt, and after a few days went back to the palace of the king in the same manner in which he had gone before, that is to say, chewing betel leaves and lying down at the entrance of the tank on the premises of the palace. The king and queen were glad to see him and eagerly asked him as to the success of his mission. The jackal said, "In order to relieve your minds, I may tell you at once that my mission has been so far successful. If you only know the infinite trouble I have had in persuading His Majesty, my sovereign, to make up his mind to marry your daughter, you would give me no end of thanks. For a long time he would not hear of it, but gradually I brought him round. You have now only to fix an auspicious day for the celebration of the solemn rites. There is one bit of advice, however, which I, as your friend, would give you. It is this. My master is so great a king that if he were to come to you in state, attended by all his followers, his horses and his elephants, you would find it impossible to accommodate them all in your palace, in your own city. I would therefore propose that our king should come to your city, not in state, but in a private manner, and that you send to the outskirts of your city your own elephants, horses, and conveyances to bring him and only a few of his followers to your palace." "Many thanks, Vaishvalu, for this advice. I could not possibly make accommodations in my city for the followers of so great a king as your master is. I should be very glad if he did not come in state, and trust you will use your influence to persuade him to come in a private manner, for I should be ruined if he came in state." The jackal then gravely said, "I will do my best in the matter," and then returned to his own village after the royal astrologer had fixed an auspicious day for the wedding. On his return, the jackal busied himself with making preparations for the great ceremony. As the weaver was clad in tatters, he told him to go to the washermen of the village and borrow from them a suit of clothes. As for himself, he went to the king of his race and told him that on a certain day he would like 1,000 jackals to accompany him to a certain place. He went to the king of crows and begged that his corvine majesty would be pleased to allow 1,000 of his black subjects to accompany him on a certain day to a certain place. He preferred a similar petition to the king of paddy birds. At last the great day arrived. The weaver arrayed himself in the clothes which he had borrowed from the village washerman. The jackal made his appearance, accompanied by a train of 1,000 jackals, 1,000 crows, and 1,000 paddy birds. The nuptial procession started on their journey, and towards sundown arrived within 2 miles of the king's palace. There the jackal told his friends, the 1,000 jackals, to set up a loud howl. At his bidding, the 1,000 crows cawed the loudest, while the hoarse screechings of the 1,000 paddy birds furnished a suitable accompaniment. The effect may be imagined. They all together made a noise the like of which had never been heard since the world began. While this unearthly noise was going on, the jackal himself hastened to the palace and asked the king whether he thought he would be able to accommodate the wedding party, which was about 2 miles distant and whose noise was at that moment surrounding in his ears. The king said, "Impossible, Shivalu. From the sound of the procession, I infer there must be at least 100,000 souls. How is it possible to accommodate so many guests? Please, so arrange that the bridegroom only will come to my house." "Very well," said the jackal. "I told you at the beginning that you would not be able to accommodate all the attendants of my august master. I'll do as you wish. My master will alone come in undressed. Send a horse for the purpose." The jackal, accompanied by a horse and groom, came to the place where his friend the weaver was, thanked the 1,000 jackals, the 1,000 crows, and the 1,000 paddy birds for their valuable services, and told them all to go away, while he himself and the weaver on horseback wended their way to the king's palace. The bridal party waiting in the palace were greatly disappointed at the personal appearance of the weaver, but the jackal told them that his master had purposely put on a mean dress, as his would-be father-in-law declared himself unable to accommodate the bridegroom and his attendants coming in state. The royal priests now began the interesting ceremony, and the nuptial knot was tied forever. The bridegroom seldom opened his lips, agreeably to the instructions of the jackal, who was afraid lest his speech should betray him. At night, when he was lying in bed, he began to count the beams and rafters of the room and said audibly, "This beam will make a first-rate loom, that other a capital beam, and that yonder an excellent sleigh." The princess, his bride, was not a little astonished. She began to think in her mind, "Is the man to whom they have tied me a king or a weaver? I'm afraid he is the latter. Otherwise, why should he be talking of weaver's loom, beam, and sleigh? Ah me! Is this what the fates keep in store for me?" In the morning, the princess related to the queen mother the weaver's soliloquy. The king and queen, not a little surprised at this recital, took the jackal to task about it. The ready-witted jackal at once said, "Your Majesty need not be surprised at my august master's soliloquy. His palace is surrounded by a population of 700 families of the best weavers in the world, to whom he has given rent-free lands, and whose welfare he continually seeks. It must have been in one of his philanthropic moods that he uttered the soliloquy, which has taken your Majesty by surprise." The jackal, however, now felt that it was high time for himself and the weaver to decamp with the princess, since the proverbial simplicity of his friend of the loom might any moment involve him in danger. The jackal therefore represented to the king that weighty affairs of state would not permit his august master to spend another day in the palace, that he should start for his kingdom that very day with his bride, and his master was resolved to travel incognito on foot. Only the princess, now the queen, should leave the city in a palki. After a great deal of yea and nay, the king and queen at last consented to the proposal. The party came to the outskirts of the weaver's village. The palki bearers were sent away, and the princess, who asked where her husband's palace was made to walk on foot. The weaver's hut was soon reached, and the jackal, addressing the princess, said, "This, madam, is your husband's palace." The princess began to beat her forehead with the palms of her hands in sheer despair. "Ah me! Is this the husband whom Prajapati intended for me? Death would have been 1,000 times better." As there was nothing for it, the princess soon got reconciled to her fate. She, however, determined to make her husband rich, especially as she knew the secret of becoming rich. One day, she told her husband to get for her a pice's worth of flour. She put a little water in the flour and smeared her body with the paste. When the paste dried on her body, she began wiping the paste with her fingers. And as the paste fell in small balls from her body, it got turned into gold. She repeated this process every day for some time, and thus got an immense quantity of gold. She soon became mistress of more gold than is to be found in the coffers of any king. With this gold, she employed a whole army of masons, carpenters, and architects, who in no time built one of the finest palaces in the world. 700 families of weavers were sought for and settled round about the palace. After this, she wrote a letter to her father to say that she was sorry he had not favored her with a visit since the day of her marriage, and that she would be delighted if he now came to see her and her husband. The king agreed to come, and a day was fixed. The princess made great preparations against the day of her father's arrival. Hospitals were established in several parts of the town for diseased, sick, and infirm animals. The beasts in thousands were made to chew betel leaves on the wayside. The streets were covered with cashmere shawls for her father and his attendants to walk on. There was no end of the display of wealth and grandeur. The king and queen arrived in state and were infinitely delighted at the apparently boundless riches of their son-in-law. The jackal now appeared on the scene, and saluting the king and queen said, "Did I not tell you? Here my story endeth, the knotty thorn withereth," etc. So with this, I come to the end of today's story. Thank you so much for spending your time with me on our cozy reading corner at Mountain Home Stories. I hope these timeless village tales brought a sense of peace to your heart and comfort to your day. If you enjoyed our journey through the hidden village, please take a quick moment to like this video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to Mountain Home Stories. Your beautiful support keeps these classic tales alive. Keep an eye on your feed because our next cozy story adventure is dropping this Wednesday. Until then, stay safe, take care, and I'll see you in our next story.